I have a black shirt on. Does that make me evil? Greetings and welcome back to another fun and exciting episode of the Vodkast Does Dungeons and Dragons. I'm your host, as always, DMJ. Now, today's topic is very interesting to me. I have never personally run an evil campaign. However, I have had a character in a game turn evil, which was one of the most dramatic moments in my game that I'd ever run up to that point. Evil is defined as profoundly immoral and wicked, but does that make every evil character bad? What makes an evil character really evil? That's the question I want to ask at the heart of things, because I think about characters like Anakin Skywalker, and what he did, though we would consider evil, especially, slaying all those younglings, is an act of truth to him. To him, he sees things from a different perspective. And even though we consider that evil, does that necessarily make him evil? I think a lot of it relies on the adjective that falls before the evil part of the alignment in D&D. D&D's alignment system is interesting to me due to the fact that they are those adjectives, chaotic, lawful, or neutral, in front of the evil, good, or neutral. And I think that really can help define a character, because a chaotic good character, I've seen some chaotic good characters do some acts that I wouldn't consider good, and I've kept an eye on that in my games. It's interesting to see how players actually use their alignment. I know a lot of players that just totally disregard it. They throw it in there at the beginning of the game, and they forget all about it. But if you're playing something like a paladin, then you must remain lawful, or those acts of evil or any act outside of the world of law and goodness is definitely going to affect that character's alignment over the course of time. There was once a wizard in one of my games who started out as a neutral character. The party was comprised of Alistair, who was a neutral wizard, Janik Spelldancer, who was a human wild mage. We had Kalamar Lanre, who was a drow ranger. And we had Shirak Thunderstep, who was a Furbolg warrior. Along the way, there were other players in the game. Seven is a notable one. He was a Minotaur warrior as well. That party never had a rogue, oddly enough. But if a chaotic good character thinks in his mind he's doing something right, does that make it not evil, or does it define it as evil because it's still an evil act? Let's take a look at an example and throw two different alignments at it. Let's say, in this case, there is an orphanage burning down. Now, a chaotic good character is not going to have a second thought. They should dive right in there and start pulling the kids out of the burning orphanage. That seems the right thing. However, what about a lawful evil character? Sure, they are evil, but they still abide by the laws. Is a lawful evil character supposed to turn his head because he's evil? Or does he abide by the laws and assist the chaotic good character in getting these orphans out of there? There's these fine little gray areas when it comes to good and evil, I think. And no character is truly good. No character is truly evil at heart, I don't believe. Anakin is a perfect example of this. He's someone who is torn inside because of things that have happened to him in his past have led him on a path that will eventually turn him to evil. However, in his mind, he's been twisted by Palpatine for so long that he doesn't believe that these acts are evil. So does that truly define him as an evil character? And if so, is he lawful? Is he chaotic? Is he neutral? Where does he fall in there? I'm not really 100% sure on that, but he's an interesting character. It's easy to call him evil when he's got the black suit on and he's Darth Vader, because you look at him and you think, oh man, that is one bad guy right there. But Anakin Skywalker is something different, and I think that I can't necessarily lump him into an evil category, only because of his perspective. Now, it is very simple to define a lawful good paladin and a chaotic evil wizard. It's very easy to see what their acts would be, but when you get a lawful evil wizard and a chaotic good, let's say, ranger, what actions define what makes them good or evil? I think that's really what it comes down to. It's that alignment system. Sure, you can assign yourself any alignment you want at the beginning of the game, but the fact of the matter is it's always going to be your actions to define you as a character. Like I stated earlier, I've never run an evil campaign, but I had Alistair in my game, and I will tell you the story of Alistair just briefly here. The party started out as heroes. They planned on, saving the world, just like just about every other party that gets assembled. However, somewhere along the way, Alistair became power hungry, and he decided to become a god, and he wanted to seek becoming a god above all other things. And when that happened, I believe that was when the transition occurred, because all his acts from that point forward were to progress his goal to become a god. They were no longer about the party. They no longer were about the people of Athalia. All he cared about was his power struggle. And I think that was a way to easily define him as evil. Now, as a DM, can you use evil characters in your game to improve the quality of your game? Can you use evil characters in such a way to possibly make them the villain of the game? It's fun when you can release that power to someone else. You can be like, I'm not going to run the evil guy anymore. You're the bad guy now. So if that's never happened in your games, I will say if there's ever players interested in something like that, play with it on the side a little bit. Pass those notes back and forth. And I think it spices up a game a lot because your goal, your mission as a DM, obviously, is to make it fun for the players. However, you know how many hours you invest in writing stories and setting up encounters and stuff like that. But sometimes an act from a player can define the rest of your game from that point on, or at least for the next few months of your game. I've often asked myself as a DM, can an evil character be redeemed? And I don't know necessarily that I have the answer for that. Sure, if a character decides to switch up his ways and go back to the light side and become a good character, they can certainly do that. However, there are other ways as a DM to use their actions as an evil character to help redeem other things. So, for example, let's take that burning orphanage for an example. Let's say the father of one of those children in there that died had been seeking out their kid. They'd lost their child somewhere in travels across Athalia, and this child ended up at this orphanage. Let's say this orphanage is burnt down now. He's lost his son. That father or that parent can now step forward now and do a lot of good from that evil act. They can start an organization that goes on to save many other children. Maybe they open a new orphanage, and this new orphanage is well guarded, well defended. They realize that the children are the future of Athalia, and they must protect them. So just by little acts of an evil character, you can then take those moments and define the future of your game based on the actions of an evil character. Let's talk about mixed parties for a moment here, because that's when things really get interesting. I'm going to use the example again of Alistair. Alistair was traveling with a party of good characters, and for a brief while, it worked. It was okay. They knew that he was turning. However, they were doing their best to keep him on the path, the straight and narrow. They failed miserably. But along the way, the party was a very interesting party due to the fact that there were these other dynamics that came into play. When they would come into a situation or come upon a situation that would require them to make a choice, which could be an evil choice or it could be a good choice, there was then that debate that occurred. There was the reason behind why this character wouldn't want to help or why the other characters would want to help. And although it did cause a lot of friction in the game and it ended up not working out in the long run, it was interesting at the time to see how those moments played out in game, because it's not often that you have an evil character. Usually most characters, let's talk about being a player. I'm going to talk about my examples as being a player and being an evil character. I have never personally played an evil character. I don't know how to. Even if I started playing an evil character, which I think in one game we were running, my friend Mike was running an evil campaign. I was way into it. It was really exciting, and we came across a village, and the discussion amongst the party was, what are we going to get from this village here? What can we steal from them? What can we procure from them? What makes it worth it for us to go into this town and sack them? So we strolled into town, and we get there, and my character immediately is like, I can't do this. Not my character. I, as a player, realized I'm not into that. I'm not enjoying this aspect of the game. Sure, in my mind, it sounds fun. Like, think about it for just a moment. Think about a real-world situation, like a D20 modern type game, where if you were an evil character, you could do whatever you want. You can kill people, you can steal, it doesn't really matter. But at the heart of a person, I think that's what defines the character, too. At some point, even an evil character who's played by a, I don't mean to call myself a good guy, but like a good person, there's a moment where I don't think you can separate it anymore. Like between the game and reality, there comes a point in your internal compass, your moral compass, that points you in the right direction. And at that point, even though you know it's just a game, it's hard for you to make those decisions. I've never been able to perform an act of evil as a player, and that's why I've never really run an evil campaign. The idea of it is appealing to me. It's exciting, it's interesting, it's something different, and I don't say not to try it. It might work for you, but for me, it's just never worked because I, as a player, and most of the players I play with, are heroes. They want to save things. They want to be the hero. At the end of the day, they want their names to go down in history as a hero of Athalia, not a villain. And I think because of that, it just makes it more and more difficult to run an evil campaign. I know for the most part, D&D was built as a game for adventuring. I wish I had some better tips for actually running an evil campaign, so I'm going to do my best now to take myself out of my hero mentality and put myself in the villain mentality. If we look at the definition again of profoundly immoral and wicked, we can then help us define what becomes an evil campaign. If you know that your party is going to be comprised of all evil characters, 4 or 5 evil characters, that's a start for you there. So where do you want to drop them in? Let's say the world is at peace right now. There is no war. What are they going to do? Why are they in the world? Why are they trying to advance their evil cause? What brings them to this point in their adventuring history that they've decided that now is the time to act? And I think that's where things can start for you. When you start to write your game, if you're working on a game that you're writing. Now, this, of course, does apply if you want to play a game that's a module as well. However, I run my own world, I should say, not my own game. Of course, I run my own game. But I run my own world, and my world, for the most part, was good. Now I'm running a game where the world has gone completely corrupt, and I've placed good characters into it. So what if you place bad characters into a world where things are all fine and dandy? What is their goal? Why do they want to add evil to this world? Why are they bringing their evil acts to Athalia? What is their end goal? Do they want to become king? Do they want to become a god? Do they want to just overthrow the government? What is their purpose? And I think that's where everything has to start, is why are you running an evil campaign, and why do your players want to play that? And I think you need to really get together with your players at that point and, you know, have a discussion and be like, well, what's your intentions for this game? If you're going to be an evil character, what's the most evil act that you think you're going to perform in this game? Because you can really put them into some situations where it's a choice that they have to decide. And I have to wonder, in a lot of cases, where a truly moral compassed person can play an evil character. Can that work? Or is there going to be a point in that game where they realize that their acts are not what they want to do as a player, that they realize that, you know, the idea of an evil campaign is great. Now, you find yourself in a situation where some of the players are getting a little weird about it. You have all these other avenues you can now travel down. Now, which members of the party are way into it? Which ones aren't into it? Then you can bring in those elements that I had in my game where Alistair was all power hungry. That's what he wanted. The rest of the party was not about that. It caused conflict. And even though it broke up the party eventually, those games that led up to the breakup of the party were some of the best games that I've ever run in my entire life. I think that the scheming, the plotting, the running separate games on separate nights sometimes when I had to do stuff like that really defined that game in that moment. However, in the long term, it is hard to run a game with mixed aligned characters. With that being said, you are the DM, you are the mastermind, you are the one that's pulling all the strings. So if your evil campaign isn't going the way you want it to go, change it up a little bit. If you don't want to run an evil campaign, don't run an evil campaign. However, the world is your oyster. You have a blank canvas as a DM. And if your players come to you and they are interested in running an evil campaign or playing in an evil campaign, then I don't think that's something you should shoot down immediately. It's something you should do a little research on, maybe watch a few of these videos, I don't know. And in the end of the day, I think you'll be able to run an evil campaign. Whether it stays evil or not, that's up to the players, I think. But as a DM, it's just up to you to provide them with the game and the world for them to navigate through, and some instances that they have to deal with, and as players, decide what they're going to do in those situations. And if they truly are evil, then let them be evil. But the fact of the matter is I've always had a hard time playing an evil character. I've always had a hard time running an evil campaign, and I don't think it's something that I look forward to. But like I said, you're the DM. This is you can do anything you want, and I think that's the beauty of the game. It's nice that you have these rules, but they are just rules that are meant to be broken. They're meant to be bent. They're meant to be house ruled. Make the game your game. Enjoy the game you're running, and if it's evil or good, it doesn't matter. It's your game, and if you don't like a rule, get rid of it. That's the great thing about D&D. I don't think there's ever a point where you're forced, bound to follow every single rule in the Player's Handbook, Dungeon Master's Guide, so on and so forth. Another fun aspect of the whole thing is the fact that if you do have a party of evil characters, there's a good chance that you're going to run into a party of good characters that are there to oppose them. So that is a fine way of kind of putting them in check. If you ever find yourself in a situation where they're running rampant, they're out of control, send a really powerful good party after them, and let's see who wins in that case. And in that case, maybe perhaps in the end of the day, they realize that they've been wrong, or perhaps they don't. Good and evil are a very funny thing in Dungeons & Dragons. There are many cases of good characters that perform evil acts. Do I hold out against them at all times? Absolutely not. I want my players to have fun, and that's what I do as a DM. So, anywho, I really hope you enjoyed this episode. I sat down this morning with no real idea of what I wanted to talk about, but I think this was a good subject. And if you guys want me to dig a little bit deeper into it or tell you a little bit more about my old party story, just let me know in the comments below, because I am wide open if you guys have any ideas. Now, I am going to be filming for not next Wednesday, but the following Wednesday. It's going to be 3 DMs getting together and talk about running a Dungeons & Dragons game, and more specifically about advancing a party a little too quickly. I don't know if you've ever had to deal with that or not, but I know I have. So I think that it'll be an interesting discussion. And so 2 weeks from now, I should have that video up. I don't know if we'll have a new Vodkast Does Dungeons & Dragons next week or not. However, I hope you've enjoyed this episode. And if you love the content that I'm creating as much as I love creating the content that you guys are watching, would you please consider liking, commenting, subscribing, sharing, and hitting that little bell icon, because it'll let you know every time I put out a new video. Don't forget to make somebody smile today and make yourself a better person tomorrow than you were today tomorrow. Let's make the world spin a little bit happier and a little bit geekier together as one, singing and dancing in the sun and the rain. Live life to the fullest and love every moment of it, because you just never know when that last moment's going to come for you. However, never live in fear of that moment. Always live in love, and never let your inner child die. Take care of yourselves, take care of one another, and take care of those around you who cannot take care of themselves, for they are the ones that need it the most. And if no one has told you today that they love you, the Vodcast loves you very much, just the way you are. All right, guys, I'm Geycen Oliveira. This is the Vodcast, and I'll catch you guys a little bit further on down the road to 50. Take care, my friends, and happy adventuring.
Don't go to sleep with a catch it in your pocket.